While looking around the restaurant for the person I was supposed to meet, I saw my ex-wife, Susan, with a slightly overweight, middle-aged man. He looked like he used to be in good shape, but now he seemed like he had enjoyed life a bit too much. Susan seemed really happy sitting next to him. Everything about the man seemed to show he had money. Memories of our past flooded back as I stood in the entrance. Even though it had been 3 years since we got divorced, the feelings were still fresh, like it happened yesterday. So, instead of being with her, I found myself watching from a distance. But in the end, she seemed satisfied with how things turned out. My problem started when I went to Albany for a meeting with a client. I decided to stay overnight to avoid a long drive back. However, my plans got messed up when, just an hour into the trip, the client called to say his car was damaged, but he was fine. He apologized for canceling so late, and I told him it was okay and suggested we reschedule. Still, I wasn't ready for the extra 2 hours of driving. I had promised my wife a surprise romantic dinner when I got back home. An hour and a half later, I finally turned onto my street. What caught my attention first was seeing 3 cars I didn't recognize parked in the driveway. Since my wife often has friends over when I'm not home, I didn't think much of it. I parked on the street and went inside, thinking everything was normal. But seeing 4 sets of clothes scattered on the living room floor immediately made me realize something was wrong. It hit me hard. My wife's passionate cries weren't cries for help. They were requests for more intense intimacy. My heart sank as I understood the truth. My wife was being intimate with someone else. Even though I didn't want to, I knew I had to face what was waiting for me upstairs. As I got to the top of the stairs, I heard my wife making loud noises. Quietly looking into the bedroom, I saw 3 men. I didn't know 2 of them, but I recognized the third one as her boss from work, Jeff Davis. I was shocked to see them being intimate with my wife. I felt even worse towards Jeff as he praised her and talked about how she helped him with his business clients. It made me sick to realize this guy was using my wife for his own benefit. All 3 of them treated her like she was just there for their pleasure, saying disrespectful things and acting like they were in control. Seeing her behave like that, so different from the woman I knew during our 10 years of marriage, made me agree with Jeff's awful description of her. Quietly backing away, I went downstairs without anyone noticing, seeking refuge in my office. I grabbed my digital video camera, which surprisingly still had some battery left. There was an old holiday cassette inside, and I had room to record. My intention was to document my wife's actions for legal reasons, not to create some scandalous show. I set up the camera by the bedroom door, capturing images of my wife's face and the others involved. I could only bear about 510 minutes of it before my emotions overwhelmed me. While some might find such a scene exciting, for me it brought only sadness and a deep feeling of betrayal. Feeling completely defeated, I went back downstairs to try to gather my thoughts. In my office, I got my weapon from the safe and took off the safety as a precaution. Even though I wasn't someone who usually resorts to violence, I felt the need to protect myself if things got out of hand. I went into the living room, took the car keys and wallets from the pants scattered on the floor, and let the air out of the tires of all the cars parked outside, including Sue's car. When I got back inside, a wicked grin spread across my face as I came up with a plan, confident it would work if Sue had her cell phone with her. I saw it on the bedside table while I was recording, so I got my camera ready, positioned myself quietly behind the stairs, and called her. After several tries with no answer, she finally picked up. The silence in the house told me she had warned the others to keep quiet. Sue, out of breath, asked, "Hey Bobby, how's Albany?" I could hear the men in the room chuckling softly. "You sound tired. Everything okay?" I pretended to be concerned. "Yeah, just had to rush upstairs for a call," she replied quickly, getting herself together. "My client canceled, so I'll be home soon. Want to grab dinner?" I asked calmly, even though inside I was more anxious than ever. "Heading home now?" she asked nervously. "Sure thing. Just gotta get ready, babe. See you soon," she said in a rush before ending the call abruptly, leaving me with a knowing smile, aware of what was about to happen in just a minute. As expected, 4 completely naked people started coming down the stairs into the living room. The men quickly got dressed, and Sue hurriedly fixed herself up too. They all rushed out, and Sue put on shoes and a jacket, glancing outside, hoping they'd leave before she did. If she had been less excited, she might have noticed my car parked on the street. The men all started talking loudly at her at the same time, so Sue stepped onto the porch to listen. Right at that moment, I slammed the front door shut and locked it behind her. My wife saw my face for a moment as I closed the door, trying to talk to me through the side window with a pleading tone in her voice. But it was too late for talking. The other men came back to my porch, banging on the front door, showing they wanted their stuff. Realizing what they were up to, I called 911, reporting an attempted break-in. The dispatcher said a neighbor had already called. I gave my name and address and waited for the cops, who got there quickly just 2 minutes later. After the cops questioned my wife, I went up to the two officers and told them that my wife had been mistreated by the men there, asking for their arrest. This got the guys riled up, and they started yelling that they were invited and she was okay with everything, saying there was no mistreatment. Everyone, including me, looked at Sue, waiting for her to say something. She avoided eye contact and admitted in a quiet voice filled with shame that she invited the men over, got close with them, and wasn't mistreated. It was her choice. The men seemed relieved to not be facing charges for mistreatment. Soon after, 2 more police cars showed up and they took down everyone's names for their report. The head cop then talked to me, saying that since my wife invited these guys and they were all adults, there wasn't much they could do legally. He suggested counseling or something similar, saying it with a disapproving look at my wife. I told the cops to call a taxi and said Mrs. Thomas couldn't come back into the house. Later that night, one of the guys called a cab after finding their tires flat. They also tried to accuse me of taking their stuff, but I told the police they were wrong. I walked back to the porch where Sue was still with them until the taxi showed up. I stood there, feeling really angry. Even though I was mad, my wife came up to me bravely. She didn't know how mad I was or that I had a magnum, or she might have run away. "Bobby, I'm really sorry," she tried to say, but I cut her off quickly. "You've broken my heart, and I won't forgive you. Jeff called you a bad name, and honestly, I think it fits. From now on, I'll call you that and won't use your real name again. If you need to talk to me, do it through Tad." With that, I went back inside, locking the door behind me, leaving her out there. She went back to the group crying, and Jeff tried to comfort her. She pushed him away, which strangely made me feel a little better. But that feeling didn't last long. When I got back to my bedroom, it smelled like they had been together, which made me even more angry. I exploded, tearing the whole room apart. I dragged the mattress out and threw it on the front lawn. Then I got my toolbox from the garage and took apart the bed, throwing the pieces outside too. Back in the bedroom, I grabbed Sue's phone from the floor and looked through her contacts and messages. Not surprisingly, I found disgusting emails, photos, and even videos of strange guys being intimate with her. Looking at the pictures, it was clear she knew these people. I bitterly chuckled at how attentive I used to be to her, realizing those days were over. I took all the boxes from our bedroom downstairs and put their contents in separate piles on the front lawn. Then I started getting rid of her stuff from the guest room and found something unexpected. As I moved each drawer from the dresser outside like I did with the bedroom stuff, the last bottom drawer was stuck. Fueled by anger, I pulled hard on it and heard it crack. After some effort, it finally opened, and I found what was blocking it: 7 or 8 DVDs hidden underneath. I accidentally cracked one of the DVD cases, but luckily the disc was okay. My heart sank again as I looked at the DVDs. I didn't think I could feel any worse, but I did. Going downstairs, I looked at the titles on the DVDs, which made me even more upset. In the living room, I organized everything on shelves to look at it closer. The first DVD showed Sue with her friend Sarah at Sarah's place. Sue often helped out at Sarah's events in Avon, usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It looked like they were being intimate with different people at her house. As I watched the footage for hours, tears filled my eyes, stopping only when I saw the last 2 DVDs. The first one showed Sue with her tennis instructor, a service I paid for. She had lessons every Saturday and came back too tired for intimacy later, which made sense now. The second DVD showed Sue being intimate at her workplace, specifically in the boardroom with Jeff, her boss, and Jeff's boss, Bill Evans. Bill was influential in the community, often in the news for his charity work, which I now realized extended to my wife's private life. I grabbed a big envelope and carefully put a cell phone, the DVDs, and a cassette tape I had recorded earlier inside. My plan was to give the whole envelope to my lawyer and close friend Ted Worth, who I've trusted for years. At that moment, nothing else mattered. Looking at Sue's computer on the desk, I turned it on and started copying every file, email, photo, and video onto external drives. It took about an hour to finish, and then I started going through my wife's digital stuff. I found videos similar to what I saw on the DVDs I found. and I came across explicit pictures you'd usually see on adult websites. Digging deeper, I found a bunch of emails from about 6 months. Even though she tried to hide them with tricky names, I found emails between her, Jeff, and a few other guys, as well as emails with Sarah. Just last week, I brushed off those emails until one really got to me. I thought about using my Magnum, but I knew she wasn't worth it. I had to stay strong. The email that hit me the hardest was from Sue to Sarah. Sarah wondered why Sue hadn't left me to be single again and asked Sue to describe her ideal future husband. Here's what she said. Sarah, I don't care about him anymore. Bobby is faithful, but foolish. I'm afraid he'll find out about my secret life soon. He's not totally clueless, but love blinds him. Lately, he's been gaining weight, and his growing belly is a turnoff. Compared to other men, he's lacking. I also hate beards and mustaches, which make him seem kind of gross. I used to love him a lot, but the excitement of recent years is too tempting to give up. His lawyer friend could cause problems if he gets involved. Jeff and Bill at work hint at promotions and perks, with some suggestive hints. I laugh. I also want a house and a car. If I play my cards right, I could get alimony every month. Plus, I'm looking forward to our Tuesday party, once I recover from my tennis injury. Tony is amazing. Make sure I get last Thursday's video. It was my first time with so many men at once. As for my dream guy, he has to be rich, loyal, obedient, and not too smart. He has to cater to my every whim and still ask which one. I chuckle. I don't care much about the bedroom as long as there's money involved. I laugh. I can satisfy my needs elsewhere. Sometimes it feels too easy. Darn, Bobby's home now. Gotta go. See you on Tuesday. Call me Sue. I read the letter over and over, feeling deeply hurt by words like disgusting and the last few years. Did she really think this badly of me? Was my love so blind that she cheated on me for over 2 years? After that, I went to bed and ended up falling asleep on the couch. The next morning, after a restless night, I called in sick to work. I reached out to my close friend and lawyer, Ted Worth. Mary, Ted's secretary, picked up the phone. I'd known her almost as long as Ted. I asked for a meeting urgently, but she said he'd be busy in court all day. Mary, tell Ted I need to see him in his office in an hour. If he starts giving you a hard time, mention Tammy Brown's name. That'll get his attention. I'll see you in an hour, I told her before hanging up quickly. As I was getting dressed, my phone rang. Reluctant to talk to Sue, I checked the caller ID. It was an unknown number, so I answered, thinking it might be Ted calling me back. Hello, Mr. Thomas. This is Bill Evans from Susan's office. If possible, I'd like to talk about what happened at your house last night. Could we meet today in my office to clear things up for everyone involved? Not sure if he knew about the video of him with my wife at work. I knew he was worried about keeping Jeff Davis's important clients. My wife and Jeff were valuable to him, and he probably didn't want to lose them. Plus, he was likely concerned about bad publicity for his company and himself. Mr. Evans, I have an important meeting this morning, but I'll call you back on this number before noon to set something up for today, I told him calmly. I made it sound like he was negotiating with me. He was in for a surprise. When I stepped outside, it looked like a strange yard sale. There was the broken bed and Sue's clothes still scattered around. An older neighbor waved at me, looking curious. I knew I'd be the talk of the neighborhood. Like they say in the news, it was a big deal in the suburbs. In the downtown area, I grabbed a quick meal before going straight to Ted's office. Mary made me a cup of coffee, lots of cream, no sugar. Ted and I went way back. Wow, Bobby, I don't know what you've got on Tad, but I mentioned his name and he told me to clear his schedule for today. I could use a break, she joked. If you want to know who Tammy Brown is, she added with a laugh, you'll have to ask Ted. Hey, where is he anyway? I asked. He said he'd be here right away. He had to reschedule his meeting with the judge for today's court hearing, she told me. Just then, he walked in. Wow, Bobby, Tammy Brown. You must be in some serious trouble for bringing up that name to me. Come into the office and let's talk. Mary, hold off on connecting me to anyone for now, Ted quickly said. I grabbed my coffee and he closed the door for privacy. I told him about what happened the night before and shared what I found out about Sue's new lifestyle. Then I gave him an envelope with all the evidence I had gathered, and finally, he spoke. He listened carefully to my story without interrupting. I could tell Ted was thinking about the legal side of things as he processed what happened the night before. I also told him about Bill Evans wanting to meet today. Well, Bobby, let's focus on what's important here. I've known you for a long time, and I know you're really hurt. Is there any chance you and Sue could work things out? He asked. Ted, if it were Katie, your wife, and you found those videos and emails, you'd leave her right away. I want a divorce, but I also want to hit back hard. I'm not just going to sit back and take this betrayal quietly, I admitted. Okay, first, we'll sue Tony and the tennis club. Sarah's out because she's just a friend, but Sue's workplace is fair game. Secondly, we'll sue the two clients and their companies who were at your house. We'll also go after Jeff Davis, Bill Evans, and their crew. Ted warned me that things might get worse before they get better. Ted warned me, but I don't care. I'll even get physical if I have to. I'm going to make these people pay for what they did through Sue, I said angrily. All right, Bobby. Remind me what Bill Evans wanted, and we'll go from there. Ted said we looked at a few options, and I liked the last one best. A direct hit on Sue's workplace felt right. I had proof with videos of Davis, Evans, and Sue in their boardroom, Ted explained, saying they had influence over Sue in her job. But it could lead to some serious legal trouble. I thought it sounded good. Ted also hinted that once Bill Evans saw our evidence, he might change his tune and offer a settlement. If it's less than $2 million, he's out of luck, I said firmly. You know what, Ted? Make it $2.5 million. I've seen your legal bills before, I joked. Come over tonight at 7 p.m. Katie will make us a great dinner. You could use a break from home, I said firmly. I quickly set up a meeting with Bill Evans for 2 p.m. Right after that, Mary popped her head into the office. Ted, they're calling you on line 1, she told him. Mary, I said no calls, he snapped, looking annoyed. Sorry, Ted, but it's Susan. She wants to talk to you, and I thought you might want to answer, Mary said. Sorry, Mary, it's going to be a long day, and it's just getting started. Does she know Bobby is here? He asked. Not that I know of, Ted, she replied. Tell her I'll talk to her in a minute, he said more calmly as Mary left to the reception area. Well, I bet she's already figured out that her phone, computer, and all her DVDs are gone. I bet she was really mad that I put all her stuff on the front lawn along with our bed, I told him. Wow, you had a busy evening. Let me handle this call, and please don't interrupt. As your lawyer, I need to clarify some things right now, he told me, picking up the call. I started to overhear one side of the conversation, but I could almost guess what she was saying to Ted without hearing her words. Hi, Susan, this is Ted. Yes, I already talked to him. Bobby is a good guy and my friend. I thought you, of all people, would have his back instead of betraying him. No excuses, Sue. I'm not in the mood. Yes, I'll represent him. He has strong arguments. You know this won't be pleasant, right? I'll talk to him. But you've completely destroyed a man who was always loyal and deeply loved you. I doubt he even cares about your opinion now. My advice is to find yourself a good lawyer. You're going to need one. Yes, Bill Evans set up a meeting for 2 p.m. But I don't think you should go. Listen to me, Sue. If you try to listen in on the conversation outside the office door, I'll advise Bobby to leave, and things will get worse. It's best to wait and stay calm today. I know he put your stuff out on the lawn, but just like you can invite people into your bedroom, he can take your things out of the house. Honestly, I'm surprised he didn't get violent last night. Yes, he had a weapon, but it was for protection. Remember, he thought you were in danger. It's in the police report. I can't say for sure, but if it were my wife, Katie, I might be in jail right now. I think he acted out of anger given the situation. As for your computer, phone, and anything else missing, you'll need to talk to the co-owner of the house. Maybe he left them on the lawn with your clothes and someone took them. I've dealt with all the paperwork for the house, and you both have the same rights. It's up to each of you how you want to use those rights. Ted said he'd tell him right away and warned Sue firmly to stay where she was and let Bobby stay in the house until things were sorted out, as it wasn't safe for her to be there with him right now. Then he told Sue not to push it and admitted he was tempted to hit her in the nose. He told her to stay with Sarah and said he'd be in touch, asking her lawyer to contact him once they've hired one. Tears wouldn't soften Ted's stance now. He was not just Bobby's legal advisor, but also his friend. He made it clear that her tears wouldn't sway him and that he could be tough when needed, which seemed to be one of those times. He regretted that she would see a side of him usually reserved for his enemies and warned her that she wouldn't like it. Ted finished by telling Sue to stay away from Bobby and stay in her office for now, as he wanted nothing to do with her. Looking at me, Ted asked if I got most of that talk, sounding a bit sad. I admitted to my friend that I caught most of it, saying I wanted to confront her in person and express how I truly felt. But I confessed I wasn't ready to face her again, at least not yet. I have a couple of things I need from you, Bobby, he said, suddenly shifting to a more positive and hopeful tone. First, give me those tapes. Ted gestured for me to get the videotapes from the envelope, the ones from last night, the ones with Tony at the tennis club, and the footage of Sue with Mr. Davis and Mr. Evans in her office. After I handed him the tapes, he told me to invite Mary to join me for lunch. I looked confused, and he quickly gave me a puzzled look back. I think it's better if I check them out myself to spare you any more distress before our meeting at 2 p.m. plus. I don't think watching this stuff would do you any good right now. I don't want you upset before we meet with Bill Evans. I agreed with his advice and thanked him before sharing the good news with Mary. She joked that I should take her to a fancy restaurant if Ted was picking up the tab. We both laughed and left. Mary was a great companion at dinner, and for the next hour, she helped take my mind off things. When we got back, we heard Ted cheering as we walked into the office. He was in a great mood, doing a little victory dance at his desk. "These recordings change everything, Bobby. It's incredible," he said excitedly. My expression turned mixed, and I think he finally understood why. "Oh, Bobby, I'm really sorry. I didn't realize how important these videos were. I know what Sue did really hurt you. I was just thrilled about what I found," he apologized sincerely. "Bobby, come here. I need you to see something." Ted called me over, and I went behind him to look at his screen. "Did you watch the whole video Tony took at the tennis club with Sue?" he asked. "No, I only saw some of it last night. It was hard to watch without feeling angry or worse," I admitted honestly. "Get ready for this. Towards the end, right after Tony and Sue finish, they draw a small crowd in the men's locker room. Yeah, at the tennis club's locker room. I hate to say it, but she let the other guys who were watching join in after Tony. I'm not telling you this to upset you, but to show you this guy right here," Ted explained, pointing at the screen on his desk. The guy he was pointing at was an older man wrapped in a towel. With his long gray hair and a big mustache, he asked if I recognized him. Ted played the video, and I saw him drop the towel, showing off a big package any guy would brag about. The problem was, he went straight to my wife and had closeness with her. The next moment, she was surrounded by 5 more guys eagerly waiting their turn, I recounted. "Ted, I have no idea who this guy is, but I guess you do," I replied, trying to stay calm. "Bobby, this is ammunition for our meeting today at the tennis club at 16 Nassie," he told me, excitedly explaining his plan. I grinned when I heard it. Besides being my friend, Ted was an amazing lawyer. I was glad to have him on my side this time. We left his office for downtown, carrying a portable DVD player, some printed photos, and legal envelopes. When we got to Sue's building, we went to Bill Evans's office on the top floor, with Sue's office 1 floor below. After waiting in the reception area, we were eventually led into Mr. Evans's fancy office. Right before we went in, I felt someone watching me from the hallway. I looked over and saw a woman briefly before she disappeared around the corner. Guess who? I thought. Glad I wouldn't have to deal with her today. We walked into Bill's office, which was filled with fancy furniture and decorated with plaques, awards, and photos of him with important people. I wondered if he ever brought Sue here. In that moment, I felt even more dislike for Mr. Evans than before. I introduced Ted and took charge of the conversation. "Hi, Mr. Evans. This is my friend Ted Worth, and he's here for the meeting you set up today," I told Bill as we shook hands. "Mr. Thomas, Bob, I thought this was supposed to be a private meeting between just you and me," Mr. Evans said. "Well, I decided to bring Ted along. Anything you have to say to me, you can say to him too," I said firmly, not open to debate. He accepted Ted being there and talked to me, ignoring Ted. Ted smiled at that. I knew what was coming next, but let Mr. Evans speak first before we surprised him. "Bob, can I call you Bob?" Bill asked. "Sure, no problem. Actually, I thought it might be good to have Jeff Davis here too. It concerns him as well," I told Mr. Evans. After a short pause, he pressed the intercom button. "Julie, tell Jeff to come to my office right now. It's urgent." "Got it. Jeff will be here soon." While we wait for Jeff, I want to apologize sincerely for the trouble caused by Jeff and Sue. I know last night was rough, but if we work together, we might find a solution that works for everyone, Bill said optimistically. "What do you mean exactly, Mr. Evans?" I asked, waiting for Jeff to arrive. "I care a lot about your wife, Sue," Bill started, but Jeff walked in, interrupting him. He seemed like he might leave, but Bill told him to stay. Jeff reluctantly sat down, avoiding looking at me. "Bob, I just wanted to say I care for Sue a lot, almost like she's my daughter," he began, but Ted jumped in. "Are you suggesting you have a thing for inbreeding, Mr. Evans?" Ted asked, surprising him. I chuckled quietly, understanding Ted's point. What are you saying? Do I have some weird liking for inbreeding?" "What does that even mean?" he responded, sounding offended. "Let me show you. You know what they say, a picture paints 1,000 words, Ted said, placing the DVD player on Bill's desk. "These are screenshots from the video you're about to watch." He passed them to Jeff, not Bill. Jeff's eyes widened as he slowly handed them to Bill. The images clearly showed Bill and Jeff with my wife. leaving no doubt about who they were or what they were doing. I even suspected Bill recognized his own boardroom table where he and Sue had their encounters. Jeff, are you seriously saying you recorded this on video and shared copies? Bill asked, almost speechless. Jeff seemed unable to respond and appeared completely stunned. Well, Mr. Evans, here's how it's going to go down. Just to be clear, I'm Bobby's attorney and friend, so let me explain what we expect and how we expect you to handle it, Tad said, relishing the moment. First, Sue keeps her job, no questions asked. Bobby thinks she'll need it, and she seems to fit in well here, he told Bill, giving him a subtle wink. Second, Mr. Davis is out of the picture. Sue stays, and he goes, Tad stated, gesturing towards the shocked Jeff. Third, we expect you to make us a fair monetary offer. We'll consider your initial proposal and give you a yes or no within 5 business days. If needed, we'll start legal action in 2 months, maybe sooner, Tad said, starting the video before they could interrupt, turning the screen for Bill to see. It showed both men with my wife in their boardroom repeatedly. Jeff didn't need to watch, given his role in recording it. Bill just stared with his mouth open. I could tell he was thinking hard about how to save his business, reputation, family, and money. I knew he'd have to act fast. Jeff, after these guys leave, we need to talk about your job here. I'll talk to my lawyer about a deal that might satisfy you. You both know what could happen if this gets out, Bill said, thinking aloud. Don't worry, Mr. Evans. We'll keep your secret until we get a real offer from you. But don't fire Mr. Davis yet. He might have more copies of the video, giving him power. If we don't handle this right, you both could face legal trouble for getting involved with an employee, and that would affect your jobs, Tad warned them. As we stood up to leave, Tad took back the DVD player and the pictures we brought. We left just as Bill and Jeff looked ready to talk privately. I had a question for Tad, but he signaled to wait until we were outside. I hadn't noticed Sue trying to listen in on us around the corner, but Tad had. The last thing I heard was Mr. Evans telling Julie to bring Sue Thomas to him right away over the intercom. I smiled, looking forward to what would happen next. Bill would soon find out I had found his DVD in our house. Once we were outside, I asked why he gave Jeff a way out by suggesting he use his own video against Bill. It's about dividing and conquering, Ted explained. It's better if they're not on the same team, but each looking out for themselves. That way, if Bill doesn't offer enough, we can play them against each other. Tad also wisely pointed out that Jeff and Bill have families and go to church, despite what the videos showed. They're not ready to shake things up at home. Leaving the building, I realized it would now be remembered as the place where my wife betrayed me, not where she worked. It made me sad to think about. Ted's words brought me back to reality. Sure thing, let's grab a beer before we head to the tennis club at 4 p.m. We both could use a drink, and I've got something on my mind I want to talk to you about, though I'm not sure yet what it is, Ted said as we drove towards the tennis club. We pulled into a cozy bar restaurant next to the tennis club, and Ted ordered 2 beers before starting the conversation. Bobby, I think Bill Evans will make an offer, probably just shy of $1 million. I know his legal team from another case, and they're sharp. He's also practical. Tomorrow, I'll give him a call and let him know that a low offer won't go down well for his client's business or personal life. I'll suggest around $3 million or advise we walk away from the table, Ted shared. Also, I need to know if, in case the offer is turned down, you're okay with me painting Susan in a bad light. I won't hold back. My job as your lawyer is to do whatever it takes to win in court, even if it means making her look bad. It might get messy and all over the news. I'll use every legal trick I know to win our case. But keep in mind, there could be some uncomfortable truths about Sue, your marriage, and even your personal life that might come out. Have you thought about that? Ted asked, dropping this bombshell at the last minute. I told Ted that I had thought deeply about it and believed I had more integrity than they assumed. I mentioned that I was ready to proceed if needed, but I preferred to start by considering the financial offer route, hinting this to Ted. Ted agreed and proposed starting with Bill's offer. He assured me that if it wasn't up to par, he'd handle all the necessary paperwork promptly. He also mentioned using his connections in newspapers and local news stations. They could get footage or images, even if they had to censor the explicit parts with blue bars like they do on TV shows. Ted, you've always been there for me and I trust your judgment. I just wish none of this mess had happened. Being clueless as a husband was easier than being publicly embarrassed by a cheating wife. But you have my approval to do whatever's needed. I didn't start this mess, but I'm determined to end it soon, I said, feeling frustrated. Got it, Bobby, no problem. Now, let's talk about our next meeting. This guy, Mr. Harry Rydell, owns the tennis club. Remember him from the video in my office? He seems like he'll take a hands-off approach, saying adults will do what they do and he won't interfere. He might even let Tony's tennis coach go temporarily for appearances, but then rehire him later. Tony's pretty popular at the club, especially with the ladies. And remember, Bobby, while mostly men pay dues, women are important members too. This will be crucial in how you deal with Mr. Rydell. Ted briefed me on the situation. We made it just in time, and it was clear that Mr. Rydell and Thad weren't getting along. They were hostile right from the start, Mr. Rydell stated bluntly, signaling the end of the meeting. Mr. Rydell, meet Bob Thomas, he said, nodding towards me. His wife is a member here. We found out that Tony Simba, your tennis coach, was involved with Mr. Thomas's wife. We want to know what you're going to do about it, Tad explained, waiting for Rydell to respond. But I knew he'd handle it all himself and tell Thad to leave in just a few words. Look, what adults do in private is none of my business, Harry Rydell told us. And Mr. Thomas, if your wife's not happy with you in bed, don't blame me if she looks elsewhere. There are plenty of unhappy spouses at the club. Some come back for the special attention my staff gives them, if you know what I mean, Harry said, winking at me. I wanted to react, but Ted held my wrist and quietly told me to stay calm and let him handle it. Harry, you're assuming this happened without the owners knowing? That's a big assumption, Ted said, pulling out a DVD player and putting it on Harry's desk. Ted pressed play and aimed the screen at Harry. His reaction showed he wasn't pleased with what he saw in the video. Before Harry could speak up, Thad jumped in. Harry, you knowingly took advantage of a member of your club, along with your colleague. Mrs. Susan Thomas, whose husband pays her dues, isn't happy about it, Thad told the silent Mr. Rydell. When word gets out, every guy paying dues will wonder if his wife is doing the same while he's footing the bill. I'll need to subpoena everyone who was in the locker room that day. Married men won't be happy with you, Ted chimed in, speaking almost like he was telling a story. Plus, there's the whole privacy issue of filming in a locker room. Harry, when I'm done, your club won't have the same reputation, and your bank account might take a hit, Ted added, trying to persuade him. So here's the deal. We want a good offer from you, and we want it soon. Doing that could save you a lot of trouble and money, Ted wrapped up, while we watched Harry Rydell mull over his choices. Ted, you're still a real piece of work, but I can't argue with your points. I'll get back to you tomorrow with an offer. If I agree, you give me back all the tapes, and we keep this quiet, and I'll fire Tony willingly. Now, if that's all you legal guys came for, get out, Harry Rydell dismissed us, as Ted grabbed the DVD player with a smirk and turned it off. Oh, and tell Tito Martinez I said hi, Ted said to Harry before leaving the room. Go to hell, Worth, was all Harry could say in response. Ted laughed all the way back to the parking lot. That was quite a ride. Now we wait for offers, Tad told me as we headed to his house for a nice homemade dinner. By the end of the week, Bill Evans had offered nearly $2.7 million to keep Sue as his employee. Jeff Davis, after giving all his tapes to Bill Evans, lost his job. Bill just let him go, leaving poor Jeff with few options. I went after the two guys who were with my wife the night I found her with Jeff. They turned out to be two of Jeff's big clients. They didn't want any bad press, so each offered me $1 million to keep quiet. Harry Rydell refused to make an offer and suggested we go to court. So we did, and he ended up losing $3 million. His club lost a lot of members, and he had to give up ownership. He probably thought he could avoid trouble, but the judge wasn't impressed with the private locker room footage or the cheating. I gave Sue a house and a car she wanted, and I didn't have to pay child support. I only saw her twice in court. Both times I called her a cheater, which made her cry. I often wondered why she cried now, but didn't seem to care about causing me so much trouble before. Thanks to Ted's advice, I found myself with more money than I ever imagined. The pain from that tough year still lingers with me, haunting me to this day. Memories of all the trials from that dreadful time rushed back in an instant. Lost in my thoughts, I didn't realize the restaurant manager was addressing me until I snapped out of my flashback. He was asking if everything was okay. Unsure how long I had been standing there lost in thought, I shook my head to clear it and returned to the present moment. Sorry about that. Just got lost thinking about an old issue when I saw the group I came to meet. Thanks again, I explained to the manager, noticing the curious look he gave me, like how people regard an elderly person lost in reverie. I headed straight for my ex-wife's table. Surprise was written all over her face. The last time we were together, I was overweight, with long hair and a beard, nursing an old knee injury from baseball. That was my excuse then, but honestly, I had settled into a comfortable life with her. But now, Things were different. I had a shorter haircut, was fit from regular workouts, and had my knee fixed thanks to the money from Jeff and Bill's company. My suits were fancier, and I made sure to present myself well in public. Deciding to break the silence, I spoke up first. "You look fantastic today, Susan. Almost forgot how stunning you could be," I remarked, intentionally trying to get a reaction out of her. I knew exactly how to push her buttons. "My name is Susan, Bobby. Why can't you address me by my name?" She snapped back, clearly irritated. "I didn't call you that name, Strumpet. You know who did? I just think it suits you. Remember, I warned you 3 years ago that you broke my heart, and I'll always remember you by that name," I clarified, as the man sitting beside her started to protest and stand up, but Sue motioned for him to stay calm. Tears welled up in her eyes, smudging her makeup. Her boyfriend interrupted. "Go freshen up, Sue, and fix your face. I'll deal with this jerk for you." With those words, she stood up, locking eyes with me as I returned a single glance, perhaps revealing the pain I'd carried for 3 years. Her tears flowed even harder, surprising me that she still held any emotion toward me. Or maybe it was lingering guilt, likely a mix of both. "I expect you to be gone when I come back," she said tearfully, heading to the restroom, where I noticed the sizable engagement ring on her finger as she wiped her eyes and left. "You must be Bob Thomas, Sue's ex-husband?" he asked with disdain in his voice. "Yep, and you must be the new guy she's been dreaming about," I replied, sensing his irritation. "I'm Sue's CFO, and if I were you, I'd avoid using that term," he warned, though his reluctance to cause a scene was clear. "I just wanted to talk with you privately. I have 3 questions, then I'll disappear from your life forever," I told him, noticing his puzzled look. "I've been in your position before, and I don't want anyone else to go through what I did. I guess she portrayed me as a bad husband, offensive, neglectful, or a cheater," I mentioned, knowing exactly what she had told him. "But I'm not here to salvage my reputation with you. Honestly, I don't think it would make a difference. First off, does Sarah still hold her Avon gatherings at her place on Tuesdays and Thursdays?" I asked. "Sue helps Sarah with her home decor sales on Mondays and Wednesdays. It seems your memory's a bit off," he retorted. "Okay then, does she still play tennis on Saturdays?" I pushed. "Sue plays tennis on Sundays. You seem to be forgetting a lot for someone who was married to her for so long," he said triumphantly. "Okay, last question. Have you ever checked under the bottom drawer of the dresser in your living room?" I asked quickly. "No. Why would I do that?" he objected. "The 3 questions I asked you are why we're not together anymore. I still have all the leftover divorce paperwork in my office, legal documents, emails from Sarah and the other woman, and hours of videotapes. I've carried them with me for the past 3 years, so I thought you should have them," I explained, taking out a worn and folded piece of paper from my wallet. "This is what the other woman wrote to Sarah when she asked how to get rid of me before I caught her cheating. After reading that letter, I realized I didn't really know her, and maybe still don't, but it all centers around you," I said, handing him the paper. But I knew Sue very well and understood her routines. She always followed the same habits meticulously, sometimes driving me nuts. And I also had a feeling that even with a new man, she'd stick to her old ways, I explained. He seemed unsure about taking the paper, but curiosity seemed to win. He reached over and opened the email. "I've carried it for 3 years, occasionally reading it again and trying to improve myself, so no woman would ever say such things about me again. Out of all the evidence, that email affected me the most, which is why I've kept it. It's the same email I mentioned earlier in my story." Peter read the letter slowly and then placed it on the table. Quickly, he grabbed a pen, scribbled a note on it, and to my surprise, abruptly left the restaurant. No look back, no thanks, nothing. His face remained expressionless. I leaned over to see what he had written on the old email. "I'll be home soon. Hang tight, I'll give you a call in 15 minutes. Just need to check under the bottom drawer of my living room dresser. Back soon, Peter." I sensed he grasped the truth, even if he wasn't thrilled about it. It seemed I hit too close to home on all 3 matters. The email appeared to be the tipping point, and he needed to confirm it himself. Leaving a note on Sue's table, I left. There was no way I'd stick around in that restaurant with anyone tonight. Back in the foyer, I called my client, who didn't mind rescheduling since they were already behind schedule. Before leaving, I glanced once more at the table. Sue returned, looking for Peter. Sitting down, she noticed her old email and Peter's note underneath. Her face went pale as she recognized the contents of her old email and Peter's message. The last time I saw my wife, she was crying so hard that the whole restaurant turned to look. I felt a bit sorry for her, but at the same time, I was indifferent. That was our final encounter. I still wonder if Peter found something under the dresser drawer. Sue's tears suggested he might have.